All right. Well, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you're logging in from. And welcome to the presentation called Electrifying Your Vehicle Fleet. Where do I start and how can I reduce the cost? Staged by ASCM San Diego. We have a couple of distinguished speakers this evening, starting with Lianna Rios. Lianna is the EV Customer Solutions Manager at San Diego Gas and Electric. She's a 23-year veteran of SDG&E, dedicating much of her career to managing energy efficiency programs serving the commercial and public sectors. With Lianna tonight is Natalia Swalnick, the Senior Director at one of North America's leading clean transportation consultancies, Gladstein, Leandros and Associates, where she works with clients to create favorable market conditions for the deployment of advanced transportation solutions with a focus on electrification. Well, I'll turn this over to them in just a moment. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the general chat, and we'll have them answered at the end. So without any further ado, I will turn this over to Lianna.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. I'm honored to be here with the Association of Supply Chain Management Professionals, talking a little bit about electrifying your fleet and where do fleet managers start and how can they begin to reduce some costs. So let's jump right into it, shall we? First of all, I just want to do a quick check. Can everyone see my screen and can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Very good. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. So in this next hour or so, 45 minutes to an hour that we'll be spending together, I wanted to provide a high level overview of what I intend to cover in this presentation and this discussion. So first of all, I'm going to touch on the battery electric, medium and heavy duty vehicle market. I'm going to talk about some of the benefits and challenges of transitioning to EVs, how to determine if EVs are a good fit for you. I'm also going to touch on some of the regulations that are guiding California's fleets towards zero emissions. I will talk about some of the available grant funding that is out there to help reduce that initial first cost of some of these battery electric vehicles as well. And lastly, I'm going to touch on the incentives and the resources that are available through SDG&E to make this transition easier and less expensive for fleet operators. So I wanted to preface a couple of acronyms that I may use from this point moving forward. Just know that when I say MDHD, it means medium and heavy duty vehicles. And that applies to anything that is over 6,000 pounds and greater. BEVs are battery electric vehicles and ZEVs are zero emission vehicles. Those are kind of synonymous or just EVs, but just know when I'm speaking about EVs, I am speaking in the context of the medium and heavy duty sectors with this particular presentation. All right, so let's jump into the state of the EV market and start talking about vehicle availability and some of the costs. So this happens to be a really interesting topic at this time, as I'm sure as supply chain professionals know and understand. But in terms of this market update, SDG&E and the Power Your Drive for Fleets program provides make-ready charging infrastructure to support the electrification of these vehicles. And some of the earliest adopters in our program have been the school buses, the transit buses, and some package delivery vehicles, as well as some port equipment. And so we call those sectors, the earliest adopters, we call those beachhead sectors. And what that means essentially is, where vehicle availability meets regulation and policy, kind of pushing certain sectors to electrify earlier than others. And so some other beachhead sectors that are included are terminal tractors, regional distribution freight trucks as well. And so these are the sectors that are earliest adopters for zero emission vehicles because of those policies, regulations, pushing them to electrify earlier than some of the others, paired with vehicle availability for those vehicles that are actually out there and readily available to purchase today. So those are some of the earliest adopters that we've seen. However, we're starting to see some movement in some of the large scale, heavier duty electric vehicle projects as well. So, we're starting to see so much movement and activity in this nascent industry. And so many fleets are going to go from, just a handful of units in 2021 to dozens and even hundreds in 2022 and beyond. Many of the OEMs or the electric vehicle manufacturers are experiencing production delays, chip shortages, and everything else associated with the supply chain these days that you all probably are very well aware of. But they are beginning to deliver these battery electric vehicles in small numbers with significant orders that are going to be fulfilled in 2022 and beyond. Also, the global vehicle manufacturers continue to deliver and accelerate their investments in electric vehicles, with top manufacturers vying for market share. I think we've all heard the stories of the major, truck OEMs out there that are transitioning more and more of their production to zero emission vehicles as we move towards this industry in haste. So a couple of items to note: the vehicles, the batteries, and the infrastructure costs have not fallen as quickly as originally expected. So there's going to be ongoing cost decreases for batteries, but that is actually not yet translating into the medium and heavy duty segments quite yet. There is, a movement by a coalition of utilities across the country that are laying the groundwork for national charging networks. And while those, public charging networks in general are few and far between, we're going to start seeing more and more of those as, beginning as early as next year. So really the early adoption by fleets to date has pretty much relied on private charging, kind of behind the fence type charging. And this is what we expect to see dominate here in the very near future. Okay, so medium and heavy duty EVs. This chart indicates the vehicles that are available in limited to full production. There are EVs. These are EVs that are now on the market, ready, once an order is placed. Now there's nearly 120 options that are out there for customers to order today. There's a heavy concentration in the transit bus sector. Prices do remain high, while many of the aftermarket and startup BEV manufacturers were quick to market with announcements and prototypes. Getting to commercial production and scale has been a challenge, and I think we've seen that play out with many OEMs, including Rivian and Tesla and many others. So looking beyond the current low volume market pricing, most predict that battery and delivered BEV costs will decrease in the coming decade. All right, so these are vehicles that are announced or in active demonstration, that what we call kind of pre-production. So these are in the works, and these will be coming down the pike very, very soon. There are 14 battery electric tractor models that are either being produced or in development currently. The cargo van segment has seen especially strong growth in the last 2 years, with 18 models either available or advertised from at least 14 OEMs. So unlike the traditional petroleum-based fuels market, the EV market transition requires close collaboration with multiple parties to overcome challenges like lead times, vehicle availability, and getting the required infrastructure installed. All right, now I'm going to jump into the fleet insights and highlight some of the benefits and challenges of EVs or battery electric vehicles. And what I would like to preface before I jump into this slide is that this information was collected by G&A, Gladstein, Neandros and Associates, through their State of Sustainable Fleets 2022 survey that they administered. So this is based on that information that was collected. So there are many benefits to transitioning to EVs, but that's not without challenges as well. And some of those many benefits are indicated here on the left-hand side. That includes reduced maintenance cost, reduced fuel cost, shifting from diesel to using electricity as a fuel. Some fleet managers have seen cost savings upwards of 50%. And that's significant, especially with the cost of diesel today. Performance, so torque. For anyone that has ever driven an electric vehicle, you push on the gas, the car goes. There's no lag like there is in an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine. There's no odor. That's wonderful, right? That's not only wonderful for the operators of these vehicles, it's wonderful for the neighborhoods that these vehicles drive through. It's wonderful for general air quality, and noise is in there as well. And the obvious biggie is reduced emissions. So driving zero emission vehicles is really the solution to helping to clean our air. Transportation is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions that there is. And so it certainly makes sense if an organization is desiring to cut their greenhouse gas emissions to look at electrifying their fleet first. Now, some of the adoption challenges that folks are also experiencing is that high initial upfront vehicle cost. We certainly understand and acknowledge that these battery electric vehicles are in their nascent early stages, and that comes with a cost premium. But there's amazing, wonderful grant funding programs that are out there to help push those early adopters to accelerate that adoption of battery electrics over diesel or ICE. And then range, battery electrics, are limited in range. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a subsequent slide, but need to make sure that the duty cycle of your fleet suits the availability and the range of battery electrics that are out there on the market today. And then vehicle availability. I kind of touched on this as well. In the previous slides, there are 120 models that are out there and readily available today, with more and more, entering the market every single day, and more that are going to be, in production very, very soon, beginning this year and beyond. So what's interesting is what's in this blue box here is that in the next year, nearly all surveyed fleets, 89%, that have already piloted or purchased battery electric vehicles or BEVs, expect to continue to invest in BEVs. All right, next we're going to talk about evaluating fit. So how do you determine if an EV can work for your business? All right, so first and foremost, you need to look at the range and the duty cycles. Okay, so many of the medium and heavy duty vehicles offer ranges of anywhere from 200 to 300 miles. So successful fleets are targeting use of about 65 to 70% of overall range of truck. So about 150 to 180 miles a day. And if a fleet operator kind of looks at this, they can determine, whether, a battery electric might work, or whether they can transition some of their fleet to electric and get accustomed to the operational changes of using electricity as a fuel. Second is routes. So the medium and heavy duty BEVs are a good fit for fleets that return to base every night. or run a hub and spoke route where charging depots can be accessed. So also, charging depot. So most fleets rely on behind the fence charging, although more public charging depots will be coming online in 2023 and beyond. And irrespective of whether you're an owner or a tenant of the property that you reside, you have more control over installing charging if you're a property owner. But if you're a tenant, it doesn't preclude you from, adopting an electric fleet. It just tells us that, hey, we might need to engage the property manager as part of this discussion of installing make-ready charging infrastructure on the property, as an example. All right, now the good stuff. The regulations that are on the horizon. So in California, I'm sure many of you know that zero emission regulations are impacting California fleets, and this is why we're talking this evening. So there are two primary regulations that are shaping the clean fleet market. And the first is focused around increasing the supply of ZEVs. And that is called the Advanced Clean Truck Regulation. So starting in 2024, truck manufacturers are going to be required to sell an increasing percentage of ZEVs in California. So increasing that supply. And then the second is increasing the purchases, kind of the push of EVs, and that is the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule. So the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule is not yet in effect, but it is on CARB's docket to be determined by the end of this year. And what that is it sets the ZEV percentage requirements by year for fleets. So for example, drayage truck purchasing requirements that start in November of 2023 are going to have increasing requirements year over year to transition 100% of their fleet to 100% zero emission by 2035, as an example. So the real important point that I want to send home with this information, with the regulations, is that once the regulations are actually in effect, this is where you're going to see all of the grant funding programs, the rebates and incentives to reduce dramatically, if not go away entirely. So once the market has been transformed, that means that those incentives are no longer needed and the market is going to require it. So the big takeaway here is now is a fantastic time to consider transitioning some of your fleet to zero emission so you can take advantage of these cost savings and efficiencies and learn the operational nuances of how this impacts your business's operations. All right. Can ASCM members gain customers via this transformation? So many of your customers are adopting environmental, social, and governance commitments, and they're reviewing all aspects of their businesses. So transportation, being the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, is the obvious first place to go if you want to make substantial cuts in your emissions. Early adopters of BEVs will have greater differentiation in the eyes of these customers. And eliminating emissions also has tangible benefits for many customers and operators alike that I have already touched on. All right, strategy and planning. Where do fleets start? It is a process as depicted by kind of the stepping stones on this slide here. First and foremost, you want to evaluate the fit for BEVs. Review your operations as a fleet manager, your duty cycle and your location, your site location or your depot. Duty cycles under 200 daily miles with access to depot fueling, especially with stop and go routes, are a great fit for BEVs. There's an amazing tool that's out there. It's Geotab's Electric Vehicle Suitability Assessment that will help evaluate fit and estimate vehicle count and assess your fleet's energy requirements as well. The second step here is utility engagement, and I am with San Diego Gas and Electric, and this is why I'm here. It's very important. Through the program I'm going to talk about in a couple of slides, the Power Your Drive for Fleets program provides the make-ready charging infrastructure to support using electricity as a fuel. And the time duration that it takes to deliver that necessary infrastructure can range anywhere from 11 to 16 months. And that there's a lot of caveats in there, but because of that lead time, if a fleet operator is even considering transitioning to electric, I definitely encourage and stress that get in contact with your utility early and often. And that is the big takeaway. I attended the ACT Expo, the Advanced Clean Fleets Expo earlier this year. And that every single session that I attended focused, that was the big takeaway, contact your utility early and often. And the reason we stress that is, we want to ensure that when a fleet operator takes delivery of their battery electric vehicles, that the infrastructure is there, in place, and ready to go. So it has the ability to charge. Ironically enough, the lead times for some of these vehicles kind of aligns with that as well. It can be a year to 24 months, as you see in the blue box here. This whole process that's outlined here can take 12 to 24 months. But some of those steps can overlap and they can run concurrently. But again, contact your utility early and often if you're thinking about transitioning any of your fleet to electric, so that we can engage in those discussions and get the charging infrastructure process in place so that you can charge those vehicles when you take delivery. The third step there is fund and procure your BEVs. So there are numerous programs out there right now, grant funding programs that help to kind of draw down that initial first cost of BEVs. And I'm going to touch on a couple of those programs, but there are many out there and available with more to come. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into that during the Q&A. But yeah, apply for and secure vehicle grant funding with your project scope. Take advantage of it. Again, these programs are out there and available for earliest of adopters in this market. Once regulation takes effect, those benefits are going to go away. So something to keep in mind. And then you move into design, permitting, and engineering. That kind of plays to providing that charging infrastructure so that you can charge up those vehicles. Move into site construction and installation, the site activation, and then you take delivery of those vehicles and you are ready to charge those vehicles and put them into operation right away. All right, so I wanted to touch on some of the resources that are available for your fleet to transition. I talked about some of the regulations a couple of slides ago. We have SDG&E has an amazing zero emission regulations fact sheet that goes into far more detail than what I touched on with just the advanced clean trucks rule. So check that out. These links are live. So if and when this slide deck is made available to you, you can check that out. We also have an electric vehicle availability guide. I talked about, vehicle availability being kind of one of those concerns or one of those challenges in certain sectors. There are lots that are available on the market today. This is an amazing guide that will basically tell you, hey, is it readily available? Is it in production? Is it pre-production? What's the base price? Who can I talk to, to find more information on the particular vehicle that you're looking for? And then lastly, the EV guidebook for medium and heavy duty fleets. This is another fantastic resource for fleet operators who are just kind of at the beginning stages and aren't quite sure where to go or where to stop. Excuse me, where to start. All right. Now I'm going to jump into the Power Your Drive for Fleets program overview. This is an EV infrastructure program that provides incentives essentially at no cost to fleet operators to help reduce your electrification costs. And that is for eligible sites. So SDG&E helps to install make-ready charging infrastructure for medium and heavy-duty fleets. The Power Your Drive for Fleets program is a $100 million program that we're going to be rolling out over the next 5+ years. The goal of this program is really to bring in 3,000 new electric vehicles that are both on and off-road, class 2 through 8, into our region at over 300 customer sites. And that primarily includes commercial and private fleets. Moving over to the right side of the slide, I wanted to touch on some of the program requirements. When we're engaging in discussions with fleet operators, we want to make sure that it's clear you have to demonstrate to procure a minimum of 2 electric vehicles to be eligible for this no-cost program. When we engage in these discussions, we also want to make sure that we engage in the longer-term vision, not just the immediate short-term need of, acquiring these 2 vehicles, maybe in the next 2 years, but hey, what are your vehicle acquisition plans over a longer span of time? Let's say 10 years. If SDG&E is going to go in and make these significant site improvements, we want to go in and do it once. It's quite extensive work to go in and install this infrastructure and provide those upgrades. So let's do this to meet your long-term vehicle acquisition plan over a 10-year period. Pretty consistent throughout the state, regardless of whether you are in Pacific Gas and Electric's territory or Southern California Edison's territory or SDG&E's territory. There is a requirement to provide data related to charger usage for a minimum of 5 years. All of these program requirements are pretty consistent throughout the state. So I just wanted to put that out there. And again, so whether you own or lease a property where chargers are going to be installed, that's okay. It doesn't preclude you from participating in this program. It just tells us, hey, if you're a tenant and you're leasing the property, we need to engage in a discussion with the property owner as an easement may be required in order for us to install this infrastructure, as an example. And the requirement really is to operate and maintain the vehicles and chargers for a minimum of 10 years. Okay. So program eligibility includes both on-road and off-road vehicles. I mentioned anything over 6,000 GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. So as you can see, kind of on the left-hand side here, you're looking at some medium-duty vehicle examples, delivery and shuttle vehicles that are class 2 through 6. You're looking at work trucks, also heavy-duty. So we're looking at transit, school buses, goods movement, and transportation refrigeration units as well. And then on the off-road side, we also can provide the infrastructure for yard trucks, airport ground support equipment, as well as forklifts. And then there was a unique caveat in our decision for this program that has a carve out specifically for truck stop electrification. And we are currently exploring one site in our region to deploy charging infrastructure that will be made more on a public charging type basis as well. Okay, there's 2 options for installation and ownership through this program. And the first is what we call option 1, which is the SDG&E owned infrastructure. So everything that you see on this slide up on the upper option 1 top here, the teal arrow there, everything from the power lines all the way to the stub out where the charger goes is what SDG&E will pay for, construct, own, and maintain. Now, everything in the green arrow, which includes the charger and the actual vehicle, that's what the customer is responsible for acquiring. That's what we call option 1. Now, option 2 is what we call the customer-owned infrastructure. So SDG&E will still pay for, construct, and own and maintain the infrastructure from the power lines to the meter, but the customer has the option of taking on the customer side infrastructure, everything behind the meter. And what we can do through the program is provide a rebate of up to 80% of the costs in order to do that. What I wanted to add about these ownership options is, the question that we oftentimes get is, well, why would someone take on option 2 and get a rebate of only 80% when, you can go with option 1 and, get everything paid for? So some really good examples that I wanted to share with everyone is if a site host opts to integrate vehicle to grid capable EV chargers, you must go through the program using option 2. And the reason for that is SDG&E's design standards do not allow for the direct interconnection to SDG&E owned assets. So that's one example. Another example may be, if a customer, has engaged in a third party to do the design and build out of their site, and they already have that contractual relationship in place, they can certainly go ahead and do that. And we can provide the rebate of up to 80% of the cost. Those are just a couple of examples why you would want to go with option 2 versus option 1. All right, the electrification timeline. So the big takeaway on this slide, and I mentioned it earlier, is that it can take anywhere from 11 to 16 months in order for us to provide the charging infrastructure to serve your electric fleet. So from the time you submit your interest in your application to the time that those chargers are ready to be used can be 11 to 16 months. That's a little while. That timeline tends to line out in some instances with vehicle delivery timelines as well. But again, the big takeaway here is contact your utility early and often so that we can ensure the most positive customer experience possible so that the chargers are there in place and available when your vehicles arrive. Okay, we also provide additional incentives with fleet-friendly pricing plans and program charger rebates. So I'm going to first talk about the benefits of the EVHP, or electric vehicle high power pricing plan. So this is a pricing plan that eliminates demand charges. It provides lower fixed rates, and it's simpler. It provides for simpler billing through a monthly subscription plan. And this is really beneficial to many fleet operators as it provides more affordable charging. It provides simpler pricing structures and improves certainty and budgeting as well. So the sample chart that you see in the example below compares the cost of charging an EV fleet utilizing the EVHP rate to the cost of fueling a similar diesel fleet. And this assumes a rather large fleet of 50 vehicles, of medium duty vehicles that are driving 50 miles per day, and they're charging during weekday summer super off-peak hours. That's substantial. And to be very honest with you, I know this example was drawn up before the price of diesel totally went through the roof. So I'm sure that delta difference is far greater now. And then also there are charger rebates that are also available for the program for eligible customers. And those eligible customers are school buses, transit buses, and sites that are located in communities of opportunity. And what communities of opportunity are those areas in our service territory or throughout the state for that matter, that are burdened by the poorest air quality in the region. And so when you take a look at the chart there, you can see kind of the rebate amounts that are available for chargers. And that rebate can cover up to 50% of the cost of the charger. And there are other grant funding programs that I'm going to talk about here in a second that can help offset that other 50% as well. All right, here's one of those grant funding programs, and I'm only highlighting one, and I happen to pick the one that's probably the most popular, and it's called HFIP. It is, typically HFIP has opened up, and Natalia, I can't even remember what HFIP stands for. Hybrid Vehicle Incentive Program.
Yep.
Okay. And typically this program, when it has opened up, all of the funds, the millions and millions of dollars have been, expended and fully encumbered within a matter of minutes, if not hours. But the last tranche that opened up, I want to say in March, the program's still open. There's millions of dollars still available in funding this year. Voucher applications are on a first come, first served basis until the funding is exhausted. The one thing that I wanted to mention about why this program is so popular is this is, what is considered to be, I guess, one of the more simpler programs to engage in. And this is kind of a cash on the hood type rebate that is taken at the actual dealership. So you don't even have to put the cash outlay out there first. It's worked into the deal. You just need to make sure that your vehicle is on their eligible, vehicle list, and you need to make sure that you're working through an eligible dealer who's gone through the training and understands all the requirements and so forth. So the other important point to mention here is that fleet caps go into effect next year. So private fleets larger than 100 vehicles will no longer be eligible for HFIP funding next year. So again, another good reason to, consider exploring going electric now, taking advantage of these amazing incentives. So for more information, visit californiahfip.org. Another program that is worthy of mentioning is called the Energize program. And this one is really exciting because this is an incentive program that helps to offset some of the EV infrastructure and charging equipment. So I had mentioned that if you're an eligible customer, SDG&E's program, the Power Your Drive for Fleets, can cover up to 50% of the cost, right? And this program can cover the other 50%. And Energize program is about to open up on September 1st. Their EV Jumpstart funding lane is what they call it. So if any fleets are out there thinking about it, definitely look into this. It is a first come, first served program, and fleets are encouraged to apply on opening day. They can be eligible for up to $750,000 of grant funding per EV project. So the funding covers the EV hardware, the software, including level 2 chargers, DC fast chargers, as well as the charging management software. So to learn more about this amazing program, encourage you to visit energize.org. All right, and with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and my amazing colleague and friend, Natalia Swalnick, is going to help guide us through some of the questions, if any of you have any.
Yeah, we had a couple come in on the chat. So one of them involves HFIP, and I'm going to work on pulling up the specific information while you answer maybe the first question. So actually, it pertains to slide 12, if you're able to go back to that one. And I believe that's the slide where you addressed advanced clean truck and advanced clean fleet. And there was a question about those regulations. Are they just in California or are they across the US?
Yeah, let me go to that slide. Yeah, so yes, those are just in California, but many states across the country look to California to see what we're doing. We are, as a state, the trailblazers, if you will, So many are jumping on board and considering very similar regulations as well.
Great. So another question is about this, some of the specifics for HVIP. And like I said, I'm working on pulling up some of the information, and it might involve some offline follow-up, which I think Lianna and I are both happy to do. But it's concerning multiple HVIP grants. And so I wasn't sure if you knew that one off the top of your heads. If a purchaser applies for multiple vehicles with multiple applications, do you know if that happens to dilute their ability to be approved, or if it falls into that first come first serve? So
that is that's a really good question, Natalia. I don't know the answer to that right off the top, but I certainly encourage you to check out the californiahvip.org website. They have an amazing, FAQ that will probably answer that question, but I don't know that one right off the top.
One answer that I did find online, it says, the question is, can I apply for more than one voucher? And the answer is yes. Fleets may request up to 30 vouchers per calendar year. The cap for drayage fleets is set at 50 voucher requests per year. Requests that are redeemed within the same year that they are requested do not count against the cap. So what that says to me is that they don't want one entity to come in and take a large chunk of vouchers and not show any movement towards achieving them. So if there's a fleet out there that reaches the cap of 30, but then they redeem some of those, it clears the space to go back and get more, because they want to be able to spread the funding of the program around. And what happens is sometimes vouchers come back, like my organization, G&A, we actually track the amount of available funding on a pretty much a day-to-day basis. So how much is left in the HVIP coffers every year, or sorry, every day. And some days the money goes down if they've awarded some vouchers. And then other days you'll actually see that like maybe there was a little bit more money than the day previously. And that might be because of a supply chain issue. Maybe the truck isn't going to be delivered that year, and so you can't use the voucher, or it's not going to meet that timeline. I actually come from the OEM side myself, and I was the point person that organized the team that helped put together the executive order package, which is kind of the precursor that you have to have that executive order before you can get HVIP listed. And it is a challenge. It's not that they're asking for something that's unattainable, but it's just something that is, you have to check a lot of boxes in order to be eligible. So it's a really interesting program, because like Lianna said, it's off the hood price of the vehicle. So actually the voucher goes directly to the dealer. The purchaser will likely never receive the voucher, because it goes to the dealer, who then passes on that discount, if you will, to the fleet.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalia.
Yeah. So, Lianna, I can ask a question that I've always kind of wondered as a member of the community. I'm here in San Diego. I'm also an EV driver, support EV fleets. What does success look like to SDG&E if the president of the utility was to say, Lianna, you and your team did an awesome job. What would you feel like the program had achieved in order to get that recognition?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's really an exciting time. We've just completed, we're almost at our 2-year mark in the program from the time that we received approval for the program. And we have completed construction on like 2 handfuls of sites. So just recently this year. So it's really going to be amazing to be able to see and quantify kind of the positive impacts on the air quality that we're going to see here in the coming years. So what does success look like? I think every single, project that we get through our doors, if we can see it to the end and get that charging infrastructure installed so that they can transition, they can accelerate their transition to an electric fleet, that in my mind is success. I'd have to ask the president of the company what success would look like for him, but certainly, we are not the only utility that is administering a program like this. We're just a little utility down south in California. There are other larger utilities to the north of me who are implementing very similar programs. So it is an exciting time for the industry. It is an exciting time for residents and people of California, because we're going to start seeing really positive improvements in our air quality very, very soon. So.
Do you and the other utilities kind of have a brain trust or information sharing forum where you kind of share best practices and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Natalia. Yes, we do. And I have my buddies at SCE and PG&E that I ping often. And, a lot of times they're working with a fleet operator who's like, hey, we're getting ready to open up our depot, in San Diego. Do you know who to contact? And they put me in contact with them. But yeah, and it's also actually one of our requirements in the decision that we collaborate and, learn those lessons learned from PG&E in Southern California Edison, because they got their program approved a year before we did. So they have taken a lot of hard knocks. But we have been the beneficiaries of that, and I'm so grateful for that. But yes, we do talk on a very regular basis. And then other people within my department also connect with their counterparts as well. So yes, we're very well connected and dialed in.
They say if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so it's nice to see the utilities in California doing that.
That's right. I love it.
What other questions do people have? Would they like to unmute themselves? I haven't seen anything else come into the chat, but that doesn't mean that everyone has access to the chat while we're talking. So we're happy to field any other questions. And Lianna also has a couple links and her contact information posted here. And I have to say, I feel like the team at SDG&E is very gracious with their time and very responsive to questions, inquiries, making presentations available to the public and things like that. I found them to be excellent partners.
Thank you so much, Natalia. I really appreciate that. Likewise, I feel the same about GNA. A couple of things just in closing. For those that want to learn more about the program, please visit our website at sdg&e.com/evfleets. And if you are interested or a fleet operator that you're working with is interested in, finding out more information, please encourage them to submit an interest form at sdg&e.com/mbhd-interest-form. I do have a team of 5 customer solutions advisors who are dedicated to working with fleet operators all day, every day, providing them with information, education, pointing them to the resources to help them transition to an electric fleet. So I want to thank you so much, ASCM, for your time. Thank you for the invite and really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. That is my name, Lianna Rios, EV Customer Solutions Manager. There's my email address and my phone number, so don't hesitate to reach out. And Jim, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for a really informative and really lively presentation. I think that has potential to help a lot of people make the transition from dirty fuel to clean energy. So I thank you very much for spending the evening with us. A few announcements before we log off. If you, there you go. Let's put them up on the board. Coming up, September 8th, Logistics Basics. September 13th, CPIM Part 2. September 14, CLTD. CPIM Part 1 on the 15th. CSCP on the 21st. And SCORE Framework Workshop on the 26th. And Lean Basics on October 6th. Some upcoming webinars, Sustainability and Accounting on August 23rd. And August 30, we get out of all this stuff and we drink beer at Ballast Point. Trivia Tuesday and networking. We hope to see everybody there. September 6th. Yeah, I want to go home too. September 6th, who's monitoring your critical supply chains and circularity as a key to sustainable supply chains on September 20th. Don't forget the annual conference is coming up in Chicago and from the 18th to the 20th of September. If you have not registered and plan to attend, now's a good time to do that and use that promo code to get a nice little discount. And that concludes. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, both to our presenters, to our attendees, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.